Right, I wanted to look at this video. Maybe this is worth a little watch. Do you guys want to watch this? It's Xeno's What is FFLogs and how to become a better Final Fantasy XIV player using it. Could be an interesting video to look at. Because I know looking at Warcraft logs from a Warcraft perspective, and I want to see how they sort of use them in FF, and look at, like, if things are the same, if he says anything different. Yeah, so check this out. See what he has to say.
When I did this video, I kind of just, like, assumed people knew a lot more than they did. So that...
Yeah, explain. So his original video was, he explains why tank... Wait, hold on. What is it?
So here's my latest video. When I did this video, I kind of just...
Xeno explains tank range DPS versus, or R DPS versus A DPS, and why Final Fantasy XIV is hard to balance. What does he mean by tank R and A DPS? I've not actually heard those terms. For me, R DPS would be ranged, but then you'd have M for like melee DPS or something, but this must be something is to do with tanks, right? But regardless, that's the title of his original video.
Assumed people knew a lot more than they did. So that's
right, raw and adjusted. Okay,
my first mistake. My second mistake was I called ADPS actual DPS when it's actually called adjusted DPS. But for tanks, more or less, it's actual DPS. And this was supposed to be from a tank perspective. And I got a lot of questions asking about like Dancer and, you know, other shit like that. So I just decided that I just wanted to talk about it again. Okay, so basically, this is the site. Now, this site is very, very good. The main thing that I want to address is that this site can be used as a learning tool, okay? So one of the main things about this is RDPS, ADPS, and NDPS. It's important to know what the differences are, okay? What is RDPS? RDPS stands for Raid Contributing DPS, and it's measured by how much damage you actually brought to the raid. Before we continue, this metric mostly applies to RDPS jobs. What is an RDPS job? Like Dancer, because they have a raid buff. Bard, they have a raid buff. Anything with a raid buff. This is just basic shit, okay? Yep, so that you have a basic understanding of how this shit works. Okay, so this is the example they give. So RDPS equals DPS minus damage gained from others, but the damage given to others by your own external buffs. So for example, if you're a monk, your RDPS would subtract out damage you gain from external buffs like Trick and Battle Voice, but it would also add damage in you gave from others like Brotherhood. It's not too hard to understand. RDPS
yeah, so it takes out the damage that people have buffed you with, but it adds on any damage that you are buffing other people with. Yes. Cool.
You use Brotherhood, you get all that damage. Okay, in DPS, neutral DPS. It is measuring the damage you did with the damage you gained from external buffs removed. The formula is in DPS equals DPS minus damage gained from other external buffs. For example, if you're a monk, your in DPS would subtract out damage you gained from Trick and Battle, and it would not add the damage gained from Brotherhood. Okay, so ADPS stands for adjusted DPS. It is measuring how much damage you did with only single target padding removed. AoE padding is still allowed. The formula is ADPS equals DPS minus gain from a set of specific single target buffs. Okay, so if you're trying to play the game even remotely serious, it's good to know this kind of stuff, okay? The buffs removed by this metric include Devilment, Standard Finish, Astrologian cards, and Left Eye. So
I'm confused with that. So damage gained from a set of specific single target buffs. So single target padding removed. How do you do single target padding? And AoE padding is still allowed. Is that like multi-dotting on two single targets? I'm learning? Good. Good. There's some single target buffs? Okay. But why is that called padding? Right, like carding the same person the whole fight opposed to buffing the entire group. Oh, I see. It's the stuff highlighted. The problem is that I don't know what these things are. So, like, Devilment, I have no idea what that is. Standard Finish, I don't know what that is, you know. I imagine Alone in the shower, probably. And then Astrology cards, yeah, that makes sense. And then Left Eye, I don't know. But that must be a Dragoon thing, Left Eye, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so basically it means, like, if someone's just massively buffing you, it would be the equivalent of, like, if you were getting PI from World of Warcraft. From Shadow Priest, and you got PR'd like 4 times. Yeah. instead of like each one in the raid getting buffed once with PI. Yeah, okay, cool.
These are just like single target stuff. And for tanks, you're never gonna card a tank, or maybe in an opener when you get more melee cards, maybe that, okay? But you're never gonna do this on a tank. You're never gonna do that on a tank, okay? That's why my last video, it was aimed mostly at tanks. But the ADPS is adjusted DPS and it removes this shit, okay? So why have multiple metrics? It's important to have different metrics because obviously some jobs, their ADPS is gonna be shit, right? Like Dancer's ADPS is garbage. A lot of their damage comes from the utility they provide, the buffs and shit like that, okay? So that's why it's important to have multiple metrics, okay? Our DPS is great for showing how much damage you really contributed to the raid. For utility jobs like Dancer and Ninja, the metric depends on people making good use of your buffs. So some damage you contribute to the raid is out of your control. Okay, so what does this mean? That means if your party sucks, your DPS is probably gonna suck. In DPS is great for showing how well you execute.
But also, not only that, but probably coordination. You probably want to talk to someone in your team and be like, right, we're going to send this now together. So, also coordinated versus uncoordinated, not just good versus bad player, I would imagine as well, to sort of like add on to that. But interesting. It seems like each of these are worth looking at, dependent on which job you play, which is quite interesting.
Your rotation. This allows, for example, Dancer and Ninja to see how well they did, even if placed with underperforming partners or groups. Okay, so like I said, you know, you go into a group and you're like, man, I'm kind of blowing it up, but then, you know, the fucking group doesn't really, and your DPS is shit, then that's why. Okay, so ADPS removes single target padding, but still rewards you for playing to AoE buffs. This is the metric I was trying to talk about on tanks because it's important how much damage you put into raid buffs. This metric is very important to tanks. It also doesn't include your buff contribution, so this metric allows you to evaluate how well players are aligning their damage burst with external AoE buffs. This is good for knowing how well you're putting damage into buffs, which you should be putting damage into buffs. Obviously, this goes into all this shit here. Look at me, I'm bald, I have a beard, I'm dumb. Okay, I'm obviously not reading this shit. I can barely read this shit. You can read this shit. We're gonna move on. I just want to give people a basic understanding of kind of the differences in this shit and how to read it. You know what I mean? So going back to these different
bro, looking at all the in-depth math of stuff, like all the calculation shit, like I ain't reading all that, man. I don't need to know that much in depth, you know. For Sam, ADPS is the most important metric because, as Xeno said, it shows how well they use the buffs given to them. One of the nice things in logs is you get a table which shows you how much a player provided to each raid buff too. Yeah. So that's interesting. So when I play Samurai and I'm looking to log, I'm going to want to be looking at ADPS. Okay. But probably neutral DPS as well, right?
Type of DPS metrics, okay? So RDPS, ADPS, NDPS, okay? I used the tanks last time, so we'll just use the DPS this time. But obviously, like, you know, Black Mage's RDPS, this is taking away playing into raid buffs and stuff, you know? So the ADPS, this removes the single target stuff. Samurai's fucking, Samurai's blowing it up. But, you know, you can see, like, this is why they can't really buff Black Mage, even though its RDPS is, like, kind of down here, okay? Because if you buff this, then it's gonna just absolutely fucking decimate Summoner and Red Mage, you know what I mean? So like right now the balance is a little scuffed, okay? Machinist is fine, XDD, you know, it's in a weird spot, okay? And actually, you know what, I'm gonna link you guys a Twitter post that
I mean, okay, so like, what is this? Okay, it just gives a score. It just gives a score. I mean, what's the difference in terms of like throughput based on the score? Because the score doesn't. I don't really know how to interpret that. Is the difference between like 82 and 95? Really, is that like thousands of DPS different? Is that like 100 DPS different? I don't know. Depends on what you're comparing, because for ADPS, your party comp matters. You can have two Sems press exactly the same buttons and have a big APS difference because one is buff jobs in the party. Yeah. Can swap to the DPS. Yeah, okay, so he's just not got it set to... Yeah, he's just using aggregate scores. Okay. Yeah.
Momo made about Machinist. If you guys want to read more on this, you can. He goes in depth on how Machinist is and shit and all that shit. So I'm not really a ranged player, so I try to stick to what I know. You know what I mean? I try not to talk out of line. You know what I'm saying? Basically, you can see the
that's
difference,
good.
okay?
That's good.
you can see these differences and stuff.
You don't want to
So
start a fire.
obviously, Bard and Dancer are going to be a lot lower when like in DPS and actual DPS, because this doesn't include their, you know, their buffs and shit. But when you put in our DPS, you know, it does include
That's
their buffs.
when they bump
like,
up a
they're
bit,
quite a bit
yeah.
higher, you know what I mean? This is adding their raid buffs to their damage. You can also change the range. Like, I mean, I had it over 2 weeks, but you know, you can change it to like 1 day or whatever. We'll just keep it at 2 weeks, whatever. But you can do for like all the different jobs too. So you can do like healers, you know, there's the same shit here. Okay, see, this is one thing I don't understand, man, is like one of their balancing philosophies is that they actually take in difficulty into the equation, right? Like that's what they said. It just doesn't make any sense to me why they would even try to do that, because
Isn't what makes the
difficulty is
easiest?
subjective. Like someone is going to find something difficult that another person would find easy, okay? You know,
Yeah,
I give
that's
this
also
example
fair.
a lot. Some people think Dark Knight's hard. I think Dark Knight's fucking brain dead. You hit 1, 2, 3 blood spillages, hit all your off GCDs. So here's one thing I don't understand. Like why isn't Astro like the top, man? Isn't Astro the hardest? Isn't Astro not only the hardest but takes the most work? Like why the fuck is it?
As an, you know, somebody who plays Astrologian on the side, yeah, it's definitely for the more intelligent healers out there. Of course, as I have proven that I make minimal, if not no mistakes, actually, on Astro. Perfect.
Because it's not up there. Like, yeah, like I don't understand. And then you look at the tanks, right? Now, in my opinion, I think Paladin is by far the hardest. If it's the hardest, why is it down here? What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, like, that's why they need to not have that criteria. They need to stop trying to balance jobs based on their difficulty, man. Especially with...
They probably need to not say that they're balancing, because he said that they balance based on skill, which is you shouldn't say that. Like, for example, with World of Warcraft, I'm pretty sure the devs have said that they don't think that, I think they've said something along the lines of they don't want to balance based on skill of the class, which I think is really meh, because then why would you play something that's more difficult if you get, not only do you not get the same reward, you actually get less of a reward, because you're actually not being punished for being the more difficult spec, but, or class, right? Job, whatnot. But if you are playing something that's harder to play and you're getting less from it, it's going to frustrate you more so. If you're playing something that's quite easy and it's on the lower performing side of things, any reasonable person will just be like, you know what? Like, I would like this to do more, but it's also pretty easy.
Jobs like Summoner, right? Summoner's super easy, everybody says. Well, we didn't ask for a super easy job. Okay, well, everybody wants more damage. Okay, well, then make the job fucking harder. But anyway, so this is
That's an
kinda how
interesting
you
point,
can
yeah.
get a better understanding of, you know, RDPS, ADPS, and NDPS. You
That's
can
an
sync
interesting
your character
point.
up to the site. You know, there's instructions on how to do it and everything. We'll just look at mine. This is basically for the current race.
Oh, we'll just look at mine, he says. We'll just look at mine, little top 5 ranking. Couple 99s, top 3, top 10s. Woo! Uh-oh, boss spoilers, guys. Boss spoilers. I'm not looking at the raid. I'm not looking at any of the info. But, yeah, that's, what a gamer, bro. What a gamer. And he's only in blues and greens. Wow. Okay, so what does it track? It tracks, like, item level, it tracks gear, it tracks attributes, materia. Interesting.
You can check other raid tiers as well. This is the last raid tier. You can also check past expansions, so like Shadowbringers. And you
It feels
can check
good when you get 100 percentile, because I'm pretty sure the way it works, if you get 100 percentile, even if your log fluctuates, it still retains the 100 percentile for you. I believe. I could be wrong. I think it should always do that. I think if you achieve a percentile, like, it should just always keep that as your highest one. Because if you then stop playing for 2 weeks and other people then get some 99s, your 99s will no longer be 99s, right? I don't think it locks them in. It does for 100 percentiles, but anything below 100 percentile, I don't think it locks it in. It will decay over time if other people beat you. Yeah, it takes time to lock in. If you, after 24 hours, if it locks it, or whenever the cutoff is for that day, that week, whatever it is, when it cuts off, if you're in that 100 percentile spot, it'll keep it locked. Yeah.
Different raid tiers from there. So like this is Promise, this is Verse, this is Gate. You know, so there's a lot of stuff.
I'm not
here
looking
that
at
you can
bosses
actually
right now,
check.
by the
You
way,
can
guys.
also
I'm
check
just looking at 100
ultimates. So this
percentiles.
is Dragon Song's Reprise. This is Ultimate's Legacy. This is like UCOB, Uwu, T, you know, that type of stuff. Now we know what the different types of metrics are. We know
Xeno's really good. I mean, I don't know whether how much to read into like it's tanks, right? So it's tank damage. So I don't know how much to read into it. But like he's showing bosses from it's all from Endwalker, right? So I guess it's like one expansion's worth of content. I'd be curious to see if he went back through his logs. I mean, I could probably look at them now, but I won't spoil things for myself because I'd be more at risk of spoiling. But getting 99s and 100 percentiles consistently like that's really good, man. It's really good. I could show him my Warcraft my World of Warcraft Season of Discovery logs if he wants. They're getting up there. Tonight I'm gonna improve them even more so, but like they're getting there. You know?
how to look up stuff on your character. Okay, so here's one thing that is really, really good. This will help you improve as a player, in my opinion. You know, let's say...
Yeah, because so far, he's not actually looked into... We're 7 minutes into the video. He's not yet actually shown someone how to break down the reading of a log. Just looking at 99 percentiles and stuff like that, and looking at ADPS, RDPS, and DPS, like, that's all cool. But hopefully right now, he's going to actually break down, like, how to use the website to its full...
say that there's a specific turn that you're learning, okay?
Full
so we'll
thingamajig.
This. So what you can do here, let's look at Paladin, okay? Let's look at this anonymous guy, okay? All right, so let's say that you're Paladin, okay? And you're trying to improve your own damage. Now, obviously, you can use this to shit on players and stuff, but I want to say that's small dick mentality. That's small dick energy.
Yep,
so if you
that's
do
cringe.
that, you have a small dick. You're dickless, because that's not what we do here. We don't bully. We are cute here. We're cute. So don't ever do that. Use this as a learning tool to improve yourself. Why don't you look at yourself first before you look at other people? Before you bully, why don't you look at yourself, realize your own flaws, and try to fix that shit before you worry about other people? All right, anyway. So let's say, oh God, dude, I can't read this. We're picking another player. Okay, I can read this. Okay, so we're picking this guy. All right, let's say that you're trying to improve your rotation. Well, you can look up one of the top people on FFLogs, okay? So you can go in here. You can see damage done. Let's say you're dying to a specific buster, okay? Well, you can go in here. Let's say the buster happens at 3 minutes, okay? Well, you can left click and then just get from the 3-minute timeline, okay? You can see the buffs, when all the buffs went out. But one of the things that I wanted to go over was a rotation. So let's say you want to see this particular person's rotation, okay? So you can go to the timeline tab and you can see every GCD that they did. So obviously, they
what I would say as well is, instead of using that, don't you guys have a FF analyzer? Is it FF analyzer? Is it this? Yeah, it's this, where you can copy in a log and paste it here. And it's quite nicely readable, yeah. The only thing, I always used to give people advice whenever I'd be searching WoW Analyzer, I'd always say to make sure that you don't, that you double check, obviously, your search history before you post. Make sure you check the sort of suggested sentence completion. You want to just double check that nothing dangerous is going to appear there when you are doing that. So, top little tip from me.
So you can see all this stuff, and then you can filter it to where you can see all the GCDs used under fight or flight to make sure that you're getting all of your abilities under, you know what I mean? So you can see the whole timeline of stuff, and I think this is
Isn't this a site that sometimes recommends impossible weaves? It might do in the terms of Final Fantasy, just like in World of Warcraft, it might tell you to have higher uptime on a certain bleed that you physically couldn't have done unless you'd started the boss with literally impossible number of combo points or something like that, right? That's where you, as the human being with the brain, then interpret that, right? And if you look at something and it's saying, hey, you should do this better, and physically, it's physically impossible, then you just discount that and you go, okay, no problem. Because at the end of the day, it's just a tool that's telling you percentage uptimes of things or, how to maximize certain global presses. You still have to put in a little bit of brain juice into it,
to do. You can also do this with like healing and stuff too. Here's one thing that I wanted to go over. If you hover over your RDPS portion here, you can see what is given and what is taken. So this is a good example. Let's use the Dragoon. So Battle Litany gave them 630 DPS. Okay, Left Eye gave them 184. But what was taken was like Technical Finish, Divination, Volnup, which is, you know, Mug, Chain, Searing Light, Arrow, and Spear. Okay, so all that was taken because that was from someone else. So like if you look at the tanks don't have any ability to give. They just take. Tanks are greedy. They just take. Because of that, their DPS is always going to be higher than their RDPS because the RDPS is going to subtract all that shit. Yeah, so you can think of it like tanks are like selfish DPS. Like Samurai doesn't have a raid buff. Black Mage doesn't have a raid buff. You know, Machinist doesn't have a raid buff. You know what I mean? So you can like go in and you can see like exactly how much stuff is actually taken away. So like you go to the Astro. Basically, if you look here, like
but they do, don't they do like this is what they actually did in the fight, and then this is post subtraction, right? That's the real DPS, right? So you already have a nice side by side anyway, and you can actually see what the ninja here actually technically, although they were top DPS, they actually did less. And you can even see, oh no, what is this big bar here? Because that's not buff damage because the difference there is only 200, and there it's like 2,000. Well, yeah. Pet contribution. Ninjas have pets. Summoner will, yes. And then Dark Knight and Astrologian. Interesting. Ooh, okay.
7, right? That's just their glare damage, okay? Well, more or less their glare damage, okay? Obviously, Astro has a lot of raid buffs. You know, they have, you know, cards, divination, you know, all that shit. Okay, so their RDPS in that case is going to be a lot higher than their normal, actual, or adjusted DPS. So basically, like, Div gave them, like, almost 1,000. You know, the Arrow gave them 160. Bull gave them 91.
And as well, just looking at this fight, so you guys have been saying about healer DPS, obviously, in FF. And look at that. They're doing about 50% the damage, maybe even a bit more, depending on who you're looking at, but 50% of the top damage, the top player damage they're doing, give or take, right? That's pretty high. That's pretty high.
Like tech remove 60. This kind of stuff is important when it comes to trying to understand like a job's balance and stuff, okay? The healing tab is important because, like I said, if you go to like timelines and shit, you can see what abilities were used. So like if there's a part in the fight where you feel like you're healing like way too much, or you're feeling like something is hitting way harder than it needs to be, then, you know, you can go into the healing tab to see what other people are doing, you know? You can also go into the buff tab.
Is
so
how
say your tanks are like just eating.
This is how I used to get better at World of Warcraft, by the way. I went from being somebody who passed like blues, maybe low purples, to passing 99 percentiles. Literally from the course of just looking at WoW Analyzer, like taking top logs just over and over. It's taking top log. I do it on my lunch break when I was at my job. This was back in Legion when I just started streaming. But I used to take the logs, put them into WoW Analyzer, review them, look at uptimes. So if their bleed up time is, if my bleed up time on something, say Rake was like 92% and their bleed up time was like 99%, then I go, okay, that's where I'm missing there. You know, are they thrashing more or whatever? So in the case of like, I don't know, in this case of Samurai, I'd go, oh, they have a dot up time that's higher than mine. Okay, well, I'm applying my dot really quickly into the fight after I have my 2 buffs. And then I'm not letting it fall off, period. And I'm replacing it in that, you know, sub 5 second window-ish or whatever, sub 3 second window, whatever the hell it is. How do I have a lower bleed up time? Oh, it's because they're not waiting for their, you know, they're not waiting for the buff. They're just doing one combo point straight, or one sticker straight into their bleed. Oh, that'll be why, you know, or vice versa, right? Obviously, I know that you want to apply your buffs before the bleed, but the point that I'm trying to make is you can look at the differences and then go like, what am I doing? What are they doing? And that might be a significant portion of it. But yeah, it's really cool. It's actually quite fun looking at logs. Yeah. You'll be doing the same here? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I'll be doing the same here when I get, like, high-end content for Samurai, for sure.
Shit, and you can see what the fuck they're using. Like, let's see, like, okay, like, this guy used Rampart, okay? So he's Rampart here, 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 and here. People are dying to raid damage, okay? Well, when is Missionary being used? So as you can see here, this is the whole fight.
Excuse me?
4 usages. You can even tell when in the fight.
Only if I'm tired. No,
isn't about damage. There's a lot more information that you can extract from this site. It's just, you know, people with small dick mentality. This is what the average raider does. They fucking go in here and they're like, hell yeah, brother, I got a blue. And then that's it. That's the end of it. Like, okay.
Yeah, if that's all your analysis is you go in and you just go, oh, I got a 97. I'm chilling. I'm fine. No. You got to do more than that.
All right. That tells you, like, not very much information, man. Because of the comments, and again, you know, I got a lot of comments saying, like, man, you should talk about this a little more, you know, stuff like that. I wanted to just kind of give a basic understanding. Like, there's a lot more you can do with this than what we just talked about. This raid tier was hard, and the DPS check was tough. You know, some of the healing is tough. So you might have, like, tanks dying out of nowhere because of the bleed, or you might be lacking on damage or whatever. And if that's the case, you can use this as a tool to see what other people are doing, and you could get help that way to improve, you know, not only yourself but your group as well. You could be like, okay, well, this group did this.
They say in life that you shouldn't compare yourself to others, but when it comes to logs, you absolutely should, and that's only to improve yourself. If you're at the point where you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing wrong, I think I'm doing everything absolutely right, why am I failing? As a tank and as a healer, I think it's even more important. As a DPS, normally your rotation is pretty scripted, where you can normally figure out, like, what's better DPS, applying my dot or not applying my dot? Probably applying your dot. Or, like, what's better when I'm fighting 10 targets, to do a single target rotation or to hit all 10 targets? Let me think. Like, you kind of know the answer, whereas for a tank, it's like, ooh, do I need to use my defensive here, or can I avoid using it here because I can then have it available for this other thing that's going to occur? Yada yada. What does the guy do who has all 100 percentiles? What is their next step? Dunno. You just, go for the 101 percentile, I suppose. Make an alt character. Or you start making YouTube videos. Yeah, that's the next step for somebody who's getting 100 percentiles on every single boss. Make YouTube videos.
Use it to self-improve, you know what I mean? And this isn't just for, like, savage raids. I mean, even if you're, like, starting out, you can check EXs and shit. You want to work your way up to it. And obviously all this information, it might seem overwhelming. That's why having, like, a basic understanding, I think it will really help you in the future just be a better player. Because you'll start to understand things more. You'll start to understand why certain abilities are used at certain times. Stuff like that. But that's it. End of the video. End of the video.
Ding, ling, 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 ling. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's a good video. Good video. I wonder if he uses FF Analyzer as well. Maybe he doesn't like it, or maybe he does. But I'll link the video for that. That's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, it's very important that when you're looking at logs, that you don't just look at your percentile. Like, for example, I've got my Warcraft logs, right? If I go on to, when was the last time I properly played? Okay, so this is my character. Last raid tier that would have counted would have been Shadowlands in Sepulchre. No, not Sepulchre. Sanctum. There we go. So, like, that's the last raid tier that I did where I actually had multiple kills per boss, yada yada. Like, and then I'd go in and then you can look at actual, like, analysis and stuff. But if you want to see, like, cute numbers, then cool. But if you're wanting to improve, then you'd actually jump in and you go, right, okay, why am I at this point? What could I do better? Diddly blah 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 blah. So yeah, that's really cool. Are the sites run by the same people? I believe they are, yes. I believe FFLogs and Warcraft Logs are the same people, because if you look at FFLogs, it's the exact same design, right? And I'm pretty sure is it Kira on Twitter? Is the guy who made it?